It is my honor to present you with the John Bigelow Medal. Again, it's my honor and pleasure to present Dr. Alfred Sommer.
I can assure you that one more award, particularly one from your alma mater, is very meaningful. Thank you. President Ainley, Chairman Walsh, faculty, students, and friends, I bring you greetings from the Johns Hopkins University, which, founded in 1876, is 80 years younger than Union College. Indeed, the idol took up residence on this campus a decade before Hopkins existed. I know I lost half a front tooth in an annual freshman scrum in 1959. I suspect that few, if any of you, will believe that I can still vividly recall, over half a century later, attending 4 annual Founders Day exercises in this beautiful space. What most impressed me were the colorful academic processions, modern-day faculty marching in today's facsimiles of medieval monks' robes, which I'm wearing. This is everybody on the stage. What I don't recall nearly as well is what the speaker said, nor will you today. When Union famously received its founding charter nearly 220 years ago, life was both rigorous and brief. The English intellectual C.P. Snow noted that in French villages at that time, the median age of marriage was older than the median age of death. Now think about that for a minute. The median age of marriage was older than the median age of death. That situation is well illustrated by a single gravestone that I photographed in Hobart, Australia several years ago, conveying the lives of 3 family members. The topmost inscription was Thomas Smith, died aged 55 years. George Edward William Smith, died aged 3 weeks. Henry Edward Thomas White, died aged 11 weeks. Indeed, as recently as 1891, nearly half of all children in England and Wales died by the age of 5. Hence, the median age of death was 5. People got married at 16, 17, 18. According to Union Professor Robert Wells in his splendid book, Facing the King of Terrors, over 1/3 of all deaths in Schenectady in 1902, barely a century ago, were children under 4 years of age. Today, half of all deaths in developed countries occur after age 75. An enormous change over an extremely brief period of time, 100 years out of the tens of thousands of years that modern humans have dwelt on the earth. This extraordinary increase in life expectancy had little to do with modern medicine, with its expensive MRIs, gamma knives, pharmaceuticals, or even vaccines, though we're glad to have them when we need them. As former Colorado Governor Richard Lamb frequently noted, quote, "What brought health to mankind was sanitation, refrigeration, and screened windows." To appreciate why it's important to recognize that good health is impacted not only by the biological factors that we spend so much time studying in the laboratory and clinic, but as much or more by social factors, economic factors, and community factors. 2 examples. The death rate from tuberculosis in the United States plummeted between 1900 and 1950 by 99%. Before we had a single effective antimicrobial agent with which to treat the disease. Similarly, measles deaths virtually disappeared over that same period, long before we had an effective measles vaccine. There were plenty of measles cases, but very few deaths. Why this extraordinary improvement in health and longevity in less than a century? Primarily because of social reform and advancements in public health. Better sanitation, nutrition, housing, clothing, clean water, and child labor laws. People were less likely to contract disease, and when they did, they were better able to mount an effective immune response. This was true in large urban areas as it was in smaller towns. Now I'm going to apologize for this, President Hanley. As reported in the New York Times, a Union student named Jonathan Pearson wrote this in his diary in 1832 about Schenectady. Quote, "Why are the ways and walks never clean? Oh, what a world of filth." Of course, early trappers and settlers on this continent had already wiped out 90% of Native Americans, presumably including local Mohawks and other tribes of the Iroquois Nation, with smallpox and measles, to which Native Americans had no natural immunity. As a small measure of revenge, Native Americans exported syphilis to the Old World. Making a real difference could require new tools like vaccines, but equally a tenacious determination to apply them. We eradicated smallpox through an innovative and aggressive global vaccination campaign. We've now been working far longer to eradicate polio. Enormous progress has been made. The annual number of paralytic cases is less than 1% of what it was 15 years ago. And all but 3 countries are free of endemically occurring disease. But those 3 countries are politically unstable and have used politics to deny this global boon to their own citizens and to the rest of the world. A single Orthodox minister of Kano State, Nigeria, refused to allow mass polio immunization, claiming it was a Western plot to sterilize Muslim girls. From there, polio was reintroduced by travelers into 14 countries where it had already been eradicated. But before condemning Nigeria too strongly, we need to recall that wealthy, well-educated Microsoft employees living on Vashon Island off the coast of Seattle are infamous for refusing to allow their children to receive routine childhood immunizations, thus endangering all the other children and adults in their schools and their communities. Now, one hears a great deal about modern medical research involving the human genome. The discoveries are truly wondrous and no doubt will one day improve our lives. But most health and longevity is determined not by our genes, but by what we do to ourselves. The English epidemiologist Michael Marmot conducted an elegant observational study of people who worked at the English bureaucratic beehive that is Whitehall. In typically English fashion, he divided them into 3 social classes. Being English, he could have done this purely by their accents, but instead he used their employment status. The top class was the administrative class, that I would term the born-to-lead class, for those of you who watch Downton Abbey. The professional class, those would be people like us, presumably at least as well educated, if not better. And the clerical class, all had roughly the same income, and all received free health care through the National Health Service. Over the 10 years that he followed them, the born-to-lead class died at only half the rate of the professional class. And the professional class died at only half the rate of the clerical class. We do not understand all the factors that account for this social gradient of health and disease, but whatever they are immensely determinate. There's one important factor that I'm certain about, which we all confront every day. I first mentioned it when lecturing at Trinity College, Dublin, several years ago. The highest rates of death from heart disease, by far, occur in countries like Hungary, Scotland, England, and Ireland, while the lowest in France and Japan. I told my Dublin audience at breakfast in Trinity's dining hall that morning been served 3 fried eggs, fried potatoes, fried tomatoes, large pieces of both sausage and ham, and 3 pieces of toast dripping with butter. They were lucky that I was able to stagger across Old Yard after breakfast, let alone make it alive for my lecture. For those who still think that genes are the be-all and end-all, let me point out that when Japanese immigrate to America, their risk of stomach cancer plummets, while their risk of fatal heart attacks skyrockets. And I needn't remind you that they did not change their genome while flying across the Pacific Ocean. There are at least 2 modern daily epidemics for which we have no one to blame but ourselves. Lung cancer is one of them. In 1900, virtually no American women died of lung cancer. By 1990, lung cancer was killing more American women than was breast cancer, because women started to smoke after World War I. I'm constantly fascinated by the annual Run for the Cure, a fundraising quest to find a cure for breast cancer, when these same motivated women could help cure lung cancer within a generation simply by getting other women to stop smoking. The changing behavior is tough, except that is for the marketing gurus of the tobacco and food industries. And he can tell you that the U.S. and most of the rest of the world is experiencing an epidemic of obesity. And I'm not talking about being overweight, but being clinically, morbidly rotund, which in turn is generating an epidemic of diabetes and deadly metabolic syndromes. The answer is not better drugs for diabetes. It is in preventing obesity in the first place. Why are we obese? Between 1990 and 2000, a single decade, annual food consumption in the U.S. increased by a staggering 140 pounds per person. It's astounding we're not all a lot heavier than we already are. And much of this comes from industry-inspired marketing. Does anybody in the audience know where supersizing came from? Raise your hands. One person. Of course, he's an educator. This is what he is. So let me tell you where supersizing came from. It was a young man who became the manager of a movie chain. And you may know that movie chains make most of their money not on the sale of movie tickets, but on the food that they sell. So he decided he was going to try to convince people to buy 2 of everything, 2 boxes of popcorn, 2 burgers, 2 Cokes. People wouldn't do that. It appears that the strongest biblical injunction of all is the injunction against gluttony. So he came up with this subterfuge. Instead of buying a medium-sized Coke, for a little bit more, you can get a large Coke. It is still just 1 Coke, even though it's much larger, and the finances behind it are pretty interesting. A medium Coke sold for $1.29. A large Coke sold for $1.49, that's 20 cents more. The amount of money that it cost to make the large Coke was 3 cents worth of syrup. So if you could get a supersized Coke, you made an extra 17 cents. How many of you have ever eaten at the restaurant chain, the Cheesecake Factory? All right, I love the Cheesecake Factory. I love it. Tasty, cheap, large portions. But being a public health guy, of course, I wouldn't eat the cheesecake. I ate the carrot cake. It's also good back in the days. So, do you know how many calories there are in a single slice of carrot cake at the Cheesecake Factory? 1,800 calories. That is a daily caloric requirement. Do you know how much you have to run to get rid of 1,800 calories? 16 miles. Behavioral change is difficult because we all live in a societally enforced behavior. It's not enough to try and change the belief structure of the individual. That individual's behavior is driven in large part by the behavior of their social network of family and friends, their organizations, churches, schools, work workplaces, and the community and societal norms at large. Behaviors can change, but not just by educating people. It takes what I like to call the 3 shuns. Education, which you use to explain to people why you're about to make them very unhappy. Then legislation, litigation, regulation, and taxation. Mayor Michael Bloomberg employed all of these in New York City to fight smoking. He vastly increased taxes on tobacco products, outlawed smoking from public places, especially restaurants and bars, fought tobacco in the courts, and mounted an aggressive counter-advertising campaign. As a result, tobacco use amongst teens, which is most important because if you don't smoke when you're a teenager, you usually never start to smoke, fell by half. Tobacco use among adults under 65 by almost as much. For those over 65, it was too late. They had already died at twice the rate of non-smokers, and those who were still alive, most with severe emphysema and heart disease, were too hooked by nicotine to stop. Public health is an extraordinarily powerful and increasingly popular choice as a calling and a career. It engages a wide panoply of disciplines, from the basic biomedical and clinical sciences to behavior, engineering, economics, biostatistics, epidemiology, demography, environment, climate, law, policy, and a host of social sciences. It is now the most popular undergraduate major at Johns Hopkins University. But 15 years ago, we did not offer a single undergraduate elective. And the last I looked, both Harvard and Yale had both initiated undergraduate public health offerings. I think it appeals to students because it is global in scope, it engages numerous disciplines, and it can make a real difference in the world. It is also enormously powerful and empowering. There is a reason why the tagline of the Hopkins School of Public Health, as your president has told you, is saving lives, millions at a time. Whether by providing potable water, vaccinating populations, making healthcare affordable, or reducing tobacco use. Or, as President Ainley has suggested, in my discovery, quite accidentally, that 4 cents worth of vitamin A could save the sight and lives of more than 1 million children a year, and importantly, then helping to establish global policy that has formed vitamin A prevention programs in over 70 countries around the globe. The public health perspective is strictly supplanting the traditional medical model, where a doctor treats an ill patient, saving at best 1 life at a time, often the enormous costs and after considerable suffering, when many deadly and debilitating diseases can be prevented in the first place. This represents a paradigm shift among students, economists, and government policymakers around the world. A paradigm shift is perhaps an overused phrase. The best illustration of a paradigm shift I've encountered might well be an experience recalled by Frank Koch in the proceedings of the Naval Institute. He had been aboard a battleship engaging in training maneuvers in heavy weather and fog. Because of the inclement weather, the ship's captain remained on the bridge at night. A lookout suddenly shouted, "Light bearing on the starboard bow." The captain asked, "Is it steady or moving astern?" Because if it was steady, they would be on a collision course. The lookout called back, "Steady." The captain replied, "Signal that ship we are on a collision course. Advise you, change course 20 degrees. Back came the signal. Advise that you change course 20 degrees. The captain's getting a bit chuffed, said, "Send signal, I'm a captain. Strongly suggest you change course 20 degrees. Back came the reply, "I'm a seaman second class. Strongly advise that you change course 20 degrees. The captain, now furious, spat out, "Send, I am a battleship. Change course 20 degrees. Back came the response, "I am a lighthouse." So why am I ended up doing what I have? Because the teachers have inspired me to think critically and follow thoughts that most engage my imagination. Whether in high school, which is why I'm delighted that Christian Talbot, a celebrated teacher, has received the Gideon Holy Prize in today's exercises, or at union where a host of my own teachers were both inspiring and encouraging. E.B. McCullum, the first professor of biochemistry at the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, who discovered both vitamin A and vitamin D, had advice that has served me well, and I quote, "Living a successful and satisfying life depends in great measure on early distinguishing between things that matter much and things that matter little." Over a century ago, Horace Mann famously raised that bar by urging students to, quote, "Be ashamed to die before you have won some victory for mankind." I've known many Union alumni who have lived by that sentiment